Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. We're finally back. Did you miss me? Are you there? Well, hopefully somebody is. Sorry for the wait. It's not ideal for me either. In fact, I'm in quite the scramble for footing, but I found some time and there's plenty to talk about, so let's get to it. Quick shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Shay Meehan and Nathan Stankowski, as well as all our other patrons. You keep us all informed and engaged. If any of you out there want to join these advocates of humanity first and independent journalism, head on over to patreon.com/YangDaily. It would only take a couple of bucks a month from each listener to keep this podcast and community going and growing into the future. Now on to the news. So the government, over 2 years into the pandemic, is finally making COVID tests freely available. You can now order up to 4 free tests per household through covidtests.org or at the phone number in the links, just in time. The FDA has also revoked emergency authorization for COVID monoclonal antibody drugs from Regeneron and Eli Lilly because the drug makers themselves say the drugs don't work against Omicron, which now accounts for more than 99% of U.S. infections. At the same time, the FDA has expanded remdesivir's approved use to include adults and children who face a high risk of hospitalization. Speaking of drugs, Yang linked a new venture by entrepreneur Mark Cuban, which could be life-changing for a lot of people. He has launched a drug retail website that claims to sell generic drugs at just a 15% markup plus shipping. This is remarkable considering some of these drugs are life-saving and are sold elsewhere for markups that exceed 10,000%. Yay, America! This is tackling perhaps the most egregious example of the economy's disregard for human life and a prime motivator for the universal health insurance movement. Disclaimer, I have not used the site, I have not vetted the site, I do not use prescription drugs. I'm just passing this on for those who need it to be aware of its existence. That said, I'd imagine it's pretty legit coming from a name as big as Cuban, and there are a lot of happy reviews everywhere the topic arises, definitely worth checking out. As you probably heard, we already have another Supreme Court Justice replacement drama extravaganza on our hands. Justice Breyer has announced his retirement, which will happen in time for Democrats to rush through a nomination process before the 2024 midterms, similar to how the GOP did last time before the end of Trump's term. Breyer is, as you might guess, a more liberal-leaning justice, so this will not reduce the conservative supermajority on the bench, only temporarily prevent it from getting worse. Biden has vowed to nominate an African-American woman, which is, of course, causing controversy. Is that discrimination? Yes. Is it bad? Not in my opinion. I think it's a matter of perspective. Some people look at it as a bunch of people being denied the opportunity, or that we might not get the most qualified judge, but let's be real here, this isn't the Olympics. It's not the best judges in the world that get nominated, regardless of how many races you include in the list, nor is it an Olympic-level skill ceiling of a job. There are plenty of judges meeting Biden's criteria that are every bit as qualified as any others, and it would be good to have the bench at least loosely represent the population of the country. As much as we like to think that race and gender should not matter, they do. Just have a look at historical discrimination in the courtroom, both by juries and judges. There's orders of magnitude more potential for harm from the discrimination that can happen in the Supreme Court as a result of not having a representative sample of the population on the bench than from the inconsequential harm of Biden's discrimination in his justice selection. That's how I see it anyway. You're free to disagree. All I expect is that everyone have sound, logical reasons for their position. You can check out Biden's likely picks in the article below. In today's auto update, a robot named the Smart Tissue Autonomous Robot, or STAR for short, has officially conducted the world's first successful keyhole surgery on a live specimen with zero human assistance. This is a procedure of sewing intestines together. It did so 4 times and better than a human can manage, according to Dr. Krieger, a professor of mechanical engineering at Johns Hopkins. The procedure requires extreme precision, which is, of course, the robot's specialty. It's a step toward a future where robots may perform most surgeries with better and more consistent outcomes, lower costs, and relieve surgeon shortages, though it's an open question how much human supervision will be required in case something were to go wrong. Robots are great at precision, but not so much at adaptation after all. Yet. The Social Policy Institute has put together another study including the most recent Household Pulse survey data regarding the effects of the improved child tax credit. We've reviewed a number of these before, and this one is only further corroborating evidence of those, so I won't dig too far into the details, but the study shows that, contrary to the CTC's opposition faith-based mythology, recipients of the CTC tended to be employed at higher rates than non-recipients, and that employment was stable for both groups. This matches all other data for unconditional or less conditional cash grants. The money helps people access work in addition to raising general quality of life. The survey also asks those who are unemployed why they are unemployed. Only 8% said that it was because they didn't want the available jobs, which obviously runs counter to the laziness myth. 26% cited childcare, which dropped to 20% after the CTC was implemented. About 16% was job loss from COVID. Just a few percent were from illness or fear of COVID, and the biggest category was other, suggesting some more options might be needed to be added. I mostly mention this to point out the lack of interest in a job is very far from the leading reason for unemployment among those getting a cash grant, though it was also broken down by income level, which did show that higher incomes led to higher rates of declining undesirable work, which is actually something we should maximize. That is freedom to choose. And it's something that we should all have. If only politics were based on empirical data, am I right? I remember when I got started on this thinking that if we could just get the data out there, it would change people's minds, back before I learned how easily people dismiss facts that are contrary to their chosen beliefs. Was I ever that young? Still, data does have an impact, if much smaller than it should be, so spread it around. Minds don't change all at once, but you can chip away at the edges of the lies until there's room for the truth to break through. In a similar vein, another study by 6 universities gave 1,000 poor mothers with infants cash stipends of $333 a month for the first year, or a nominal $20 to a control group. Reportedly, they observed significant higher brain functioning improvement 1 year later in the high cash group infants' EEG scans. I say reportedly because I can't actually tell from the study itself if the results were statistically significant. I'm not familiar enough with the statistical analysis to be confident dissecting it, and the text is anything but clear, though that result would jive with other similar studies. While I'm not personally confident enough to use this as a source, maybe some of you can understand it better. I thought I should at least bring it to your attention. The payments will continue until the children are at least 4 years old, and the researchers plan to eventually assess with IQ tests as well, so perhaps we'll get cleaner results then. And finally, don't miss the Forward Party's volunteer meeting this Sunday, January 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Sign up link below, of course. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Bookmark and share the free COVID tests, costplusdrugs.com, and the CTC's effect on employment. Flood Congress with calls, tweets, faxes, and letters using the easy volunteer contacts below. If you need help, consult the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, or United Way. And don't forget to Yang Daily.